Welcome back. Were there any questions that arose over the lunchtime that would be helpful? Going. Oh, all right. So we've got two more for the afternoon. Probably would make the most sense to end with the 35 Confession Buddha practice, which it's it's strange that they don't give you that one. I have a copy of it, and I'll put it in the chat in the folder that I gave you the link to this morning. They will, in the resources for that, they will talk about kind of a larger text or a text with more context to it, which is called FPMT's text, the preliminary practice of the 35 Confession Buddha practice, which is a larger overall document that's going to have this shorter text in it, but then also going to give you some teachings on the topic, some background information about how to approach um, integrating it as a long-term practice. So the text, the preliminary practice, is a larger, has other parts to it. And that is referenced again in that folder. But what I'll just put into the chat is just the root text itself so that you have that. It seems like I kind of should make that available. What did I do with it? Okay, right. Okay. So that's in the chat. You can download that and you'll have it because they gave you Vajrasattva, but I don't know. Mhm.
I don't see anything in the, it's not showing up in the chat.
Oh, did I not click on? Oh, there you go. All right. So the first meditation is the disadvantages of anger. Um, so anger is a mind, the important thing to understand when they talk about anger from the Buddhist perspective, it's the wish to cause harm. It's not a feeling that something is intolerable, or that something should change, or that, people are being harmed and they ought not, something should be different than it is, in order so that people aren't harmed. But if you observe, someone that you think is causing, that seems to be causing harm, and you yourself wish for that person to be harmed, rather than wishing for them, to have a realization of the harm that they're causing and to just stop causing harm. That's perfectly, to hope that they, or, of course, even to engage in peaceful, nonviolent actions that are intended to cause some sort of change. But when there is the wish that sentient beings come to harm, and when we engage, and harm doesn't mean physical harm. When we say an unkind word to someone, we intend to wound them with our speech. We want them to shrink back. We want them to, to think twice about doing what they did because we are going to attack them verbally. And that's a kind of harm. So, it, importantly, also, when the wish to cause harm arises in the mind, actions often follow, verbal actions, physical actions. But it is the wish itself, it is the mental state of wishing sentient beings to come to harm, that is what anger is from the Buddhist perspective. And that is really a very poisonous attitude to have in the mind, regardless of, what harms seem to be being caused by others. If we can find a solution, that is nonviolent, that, great, you can navigate that if you want to advocate for some sort of change, um, then, of course, there's nothing wrong with that. But, um, when you have the view of karma and cause and effect and so on, then, you recognize that there's a longer term, kind of larger process in play, and that these are karmic appearances and that sort of things are moving through a system and things are kind of getting worked out, in this larger framework. Um, and, but of course and with karma too, that, the main thing is to apply it in one's own life, and not to think, well, so when we apply it in our own lives, then that can help us to avoid becoming angry when we ourselves are harmed. Um, to patiently accept. But that doesn't mean that we should, tell other people who are being oppressed, well, you should patiently, of course, we shouldn't tell them that they should, you know, foment a rebellion or engage in war or engage in killing or, um, but if there's something that can be done, then, and it's peaceful and nonviolent and appropriate, then, great. But it's also possible that sometimes things are beyond anyone's control, that things are just too big, and that change is going to be slow. And, because the harms that we see in the world are simply reflections of the afflictions that exist in everyone's mind. And the world is populated almost exclusively with ordinary sentient beings who are under the influence of affliction. And so, there's going to be harm because that's how it works. Because, when you're under the influence of affliction, you can't avoid causing some harm. You don't have omniscience. You don't have, perfect love and compassion. We ourselves are causing harm to sentient beings with our speech, with our, and so there are more extreme versions of that, of course, that are happening in the world too. Um, but as we're trying to navigate these harms, whether they're happening to us or they're happening kind of to a community or, what have you, to one specific other person, as we're trying to navigate all of that, the point is not to be passive, not to be a doormat, not to, just throw your hands up and avoid, anything, but as you're working, trying to work it out, to not give in to the impulse that wishes harm on others, that wishes, pain and suffering on even the people who are engaging in really terrible, painful, afflictive actions. To wish, if they themselves were free of the afflictions, then their actions would reflect that. So we should want that for them. We should want them to not be under the control of the afflictions that are motivating these terrible actions, and not think, oh, I wish they could be punished in the same way that they're causing harm to others. That way of thinking is really dangerous for our own spiritual growth and development, right? Because when we say we want to be, we want to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, it isn't, that we leave some sentient beings out, the ones that are doing, these terrible things, and we just want to benefit the other ones. We need to think of that we want all of these sentient beings to be benefited by enlightened mind, enlightened activity, our enlightened activity when we achieve enlightenment. Um, so if we think in that way, we can navigate these difficult circumstances without giving in to the impulse of wanting suffering for other sentient beings. Well, yeah, it's a training. It's a long-term training. Giving up that impulse takes probably lifetimes of training. Um, but we're going to start to familiarize our mind with that intent, with this meditation when we think about again how harmful that kind of impulse is. If we can deeply understand how harmful it is, then we'll find it easier to give it up. We'll find it easier to abandon it once we don't see it as, because it feels powerful, right? We feel strong, we feel powerful, and it's effective, right? We get what we want sometimes. When we scream at the customer service person who didn't do what we want, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, how about a coupon?" Or, "How about I can upgrade your room?" Or, then we're like, "Oh, that worked." I yelled at them and then I got a room upgrade. So that's a way of kind of getting what I want in life. Um, but that, as a tendency, as a habit, that tends to generalize, right? That tends to bleed over then into other things, and we start to practice that habit of anger. And then it's going to start, arising. We think, oh, this is righteous anger, or, they really screwed this up and they should have known better. And so, but then when we practice that habit, then we become short-tempered, right? We don't become patient. And we can't control it. We're going to, and then in a future life, right, we're going to become someone who kills out of anger. We're going to become someone who oppresses out of anger because we didn't control that impulse in our own mind. But the more that we can see it not as a tool that helps us get what we want, but as this really poisonous mind, then we can be, we can find it easy to discard it. So that's the purpose, that's the logic of this meditation. So once again, try to get into a stable, comfortable, upright position. And just, again, bring your mind into the present by letting go of thoughts of the past, any plans that you have for later, nothing to do right now other than attend to the physical sensation of the breath, letting everything else go, letting the sights, the sounds in our environment, just letting them be without investigating them, not energizing any thoughts that arise in the mind. Breathing naturally, breathing normally, and just becoming aware of whatever sensation accompanies the in-breath and the out-breath, and the space around the opening of the nostrils. And as soon as any other thought or feeling arises, we just notice that the mind has become distracted, and then we lift our awareness up from that distraction and place it gently but firmly, again and again, on the breath. And then again, remember that I myself deeply wish to be happy, deeply wish to be free of suffering. And yet I find myself still under the influence of these afflictive states like anger, ill will, malice. They're robbing me of that sense of contentment, peace. Think of so many harms that I've caused over the course of my life because of anger. How many problems exist in the world, wars, conflicts, exist because of anger. Think that what I wish for myself is to be a source of peace in the world, to give happiness. And so I must overcome anger in my own mind. And then recollect a time in the last year or two when you found yourself under the influence of anger. Think of all of the details of that experience, the discomfort in the body and mind, the lack of control, discriminating wisdom. And try to remember the things that you said or did under that afflictive emotion, how they impacted upon others. And think of how you appear to others when you're in the midst of that afflictive emotion with your face flushed, nostrils flaring, your voice rising, losing control of your body. Are you a source of peace or fear? Think of this strain in your relationships that have been caused, the regret, the apologies, the distance. Think of what cycle you want to participate in, a cycle of creating closeness or creating enemies. When those around us have been harmed by our anger, they're more likely to respond with anger. Think of all of the terrible harm that can come from just one moment of anger. How many people in a year lose their lives due to a brief moment of anger? How much destruction occurs in the world because of the arising of anger? And if I die, those karmic imprints, they can only result in future suffering. And the more I practice anger, the easier I will find becoming angry is. And the deeper that habit will become. To reflect in these ways and try to, in your own experience, come to a clear understanding of the urgent need to oppose the arising of anger in the mind. And generate a strong conviction to become more and more familiar with effective antidotes to anger, to practice them, to become vigilant, and to avert anger the moment it arises in the mind. And rest your mind without distraction in that conviction, that resolve. And when you're ready, we'll come back together. All right, any questions? So I don't have access to YouTube myself at the moment, but I have the link that I talked about for prostrations that I talked about. It's a very old video, so the quality is quite low. Um, but this is the YouTube video that I talked about. So I think it's about 5 minutes long, I think. So if everybody would like to watch it, um, and then we'll come back in 5, 6 minutes, just to make sure that everyone's familiar with the instructions. But I think it should be about over. Are there any, is that clear to everyone? So there's, different kinds of prostrations that a person can choose from. If everything's going well for you, then a full length prostration is what you should strive for. If there's an illness or an injury, and a half length prostration is still an option, then you could do that, or you could do a mixture of the two. Um, and if even that is too much, then then you can just do the kind of seated, and of course, I mean, even just this is the mudra of prostration, the gesture of prostration, but this is the sort of the bare physical action of prostration would be whilst seated, to do that. Um, but I suppose if a person was incredibly ill, then the best, if this was the best they could do, then this is okay too. But so it isn't to say that it's just do this. If if other options are available to you, it's best to do the full length prostration and to do the most that's possible, for you. And this text, this practice, I think the FPMT does have a recording of it. Venerable Sarah did the recording, and I can tell you I can only hear the practice in Venerable Sarah's voice now for the rest of my life. Um, but that's an option. They have the recording. Because it's kind of a longer practice. You may want to record it in your own voice, so that that's what you hear and not um, a British lady for the rest of your life, like me. Even when I read it, I hear Venerable Sarah's voice. Um, and everyone I've talked to said the same thing, because she did the recording like 10, 15 years ago, and it's part of FPMT online. Anyway, um, lots of people use that recording, and now it's all they can hear for the rest of time is Venerable Sarah's voice. She has a lovely voice, but um, so one option, you do want to, it's since you're physically prostrating, right? It's hard to read it, it's hard to have like the actual text in front of you. Um, so at least the section on, so you can do the beginning part seated before you get up to do the prostrations. Um, as it said, it's about 20, well, it's about, mm, what, 18, 17, 18 pages, in total. And of course, not like full pages, but um, And then the visualization, is also quite intense. There's a in the text, you'll see on page, it's not listed, but I guess it's in between page, I guess it is page 6. They just don't tell you it's page 6. Um, so that's the visualization is on page right after page 5. Um, there's different visualizations that are done. This is the simplest one, um, where you visualize these rows of. Um, so it's kind of like you visualize in front of you the Buddha in space, and then these small kind of maybe hand-sized um, representations. And each of the rows you can kind of see from the image, there's different, to some degree, a few different numbers of Buddhas in different rows, but for the most part, each row is the same visualization, just repeated. Um, for the most part. So they all have the same hand gestures, the same color. So it's this simplified, and this is the simple version. Is this? So it takes months and months of practice to try to be able to some degree, hold this visualization in mind, just as a mental image. It's a very complex visualization. So but every time you do it, you get a little bit more familiar with it. And then at the very bottom, so there's one, two, three, four, five, six rows of the 35 confession Buddhas. And then there's the row of medicine Buddhas um, at the bottom. Um, so, or no, there's five, one, two, three, 5 rows of 35 confession Buddhas, and then the row of medicine Buddhas at the bottom. And so that's the you're trying, and you visualize from Shakyamuni Buddha these rays of light, and then these rows of Buddhas, these 35 confession Buddhas, plus the 7 medicine Buddhas, as you're trying to do it. So yeah, it just takes a long time. Uh, any preliminary questions before we get started? No. So we'll use the motivation that is here. It says optional, so of course that means you can. Now, when it says optional in terms of, as I mentioned, there's multiple. You really, I don't really know of a lineage of practice that doesn't have a visualization, but there's more than one lineage of visualization, which I think is what they mean by optional. You could do a different kind of visualization. And you can in terms of the motivation, you don't have to use exactly the words that are written here. You could come up with your own motivation, but we'll use the text as it's written. So you've got the motivation, and then you've got the visualization, and then the next section is um, where you're reciting the names of the uh, of the Buddhas with the yeah, with the prostrations. So in that section, in this, the way that the text is written, there's different approaches to it. Um, what you're counting is the prostrations, particularly for um, module 14, like when you're trying to accumulate. Um, count for this practice. You're counting each prostration. So you're not counting the number of times that you're reciting the names of the 35 Buddhas and the seven medicine Buddhas. So what people often will do is, so because there's 35 plus 7, right? So you've got 42 names that you're reciting. So if you did one prostration to each of that would be 42 prostrations. If you did two prostrations, then, 84 prostrations. Three, so and so on. So what you do is you prostrate continuously as you're going through the section of the this section of the names. And so typically, and so of course it takes time to do one prostration. So generally people will recite the name maybe three times as they're doing, maybe one prostration or two prostrations, because you can't even, if you did one prostration, it would take longer than it would take you to recite the name once. So generally you would recite each three times. And then really you're just prostrating continuously. Because also, it depends. Sometimes people will do this for hours, and so they're gonna slow down, after a certain time, with their physical prostrations. So there's sort of a disconnect between the number of prostrations, the number of physical prostrations, and the number of times that you're reciting the names of the Buddhas. Um, those two numbers are not going to be the same. But generally, people will at least recite each name three times as they are doing the prostrations. Um, okay. So we will start with the motivation that's as it's presented here. So we think that the purpose of my life is to free the numberless sentient beings who are the source of all my past, present, and future happiness, temporary as well as ultimate, including all of the realizations of the path, liberation from samsara and enlightenment from the oceans of samsaric suffering, including the causes, delusion, and karma. In order to do this, I must achieve full enlightenment. Therefore, I need to actualize the path. Therefore, I need to purify my negative karmas and downfalls. So I think if I were now born in hell, it would be so unbearable. Even one tiny fire spark on my body would be hundreds of thousands of times hotter than the whole entire fire energy of this world. It is so unbearable that experiencing it for even an instant is like suffering for many eons. I have created numberless causes to be born in the hell realms by creating the 10 non-virtuous actions countless times in this and beginningless past lives. I have created numberless causes to be born in the hell realms by breaking the pratimoksha vows, by breaking the bodhisattva vow, and by breaking the tantric vow countless times in this and beginningless past lives. And I've created numberless causes to be born in the hells by creating the heaviest negative karma in relation to the holy virtuous friends, by harming their holy bodies, disobeying their advice, disturbing their holy minds, having non-devotional thoughts, giving rise to heresy and anger, which produce the greatest obstacles to achieving realizations and create the greatest suffering. Every single one of these negative actions has four suffering results. The ripened result, rebirth in the lower realms. The possessed result, the environment I experience when again born a human. The result similar to the cause in my experience. And the worst one, the result similar to the cause in my actions. Which means that again and again, I'm forced to create the same negative actions in the future. And so again and again, I will experience the four suffering results. In this way, samsara has no end. Not only that, but karma increases. So even a small negative action can have huge suffering results. And karma is definite to be experienced. So every negative action I have created will definitely bring its result, no matter how long it takes, until it is purified. So from one negative karma, I have to experience the result over and over again for so many hundreds of lifetimes. Understanding this, how can I stand to live my life without purifying myself and getting rid of all these negative karmas, just as I would try to get rid of a deadly poison in my body? Not only that, but I'm going to die, and death can come even today, any moment. Therefore, I must purify all my negative actions right this second. In order to do that, I'm going to do these prostrations with confession of a bodhisattva's downfalls to the 35 Buddhas. I'm also going to do this so that I can actualize the path and achieve full enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So take a moment and stabilize that motivation in your mind. Then we'll do our best to build the visualization. So think of yourself as being situated in a much larger open space. And in that space in front, visualize your guru in the aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha, with thousand-armed Chenrezig at his heart. At the heart of thousand-armed Chenrezig is the syllable Hri, and beams of light are emitted from the Hri, forming 6 rows in the space below. At the end of each beam is a throne supported by elephants and adorned with pearls. On each throne is seated a Buddha. In the first row are 6 Buddhas, blue in color, in the aspect of Akshobhya, with the exception of the third Buddha, King Lord of the Nagas, who has a blue-colored body but a white head. In the second row are 7 Buddhas, white in color, in the aspect of Vairochana. In the third row are 7 Buddhas, yellow in color, in the aspect of Ratnasambhava. In the fourth row are 7 Buddhas, red in color, in the aspect of Amitabha. In the fifth row are 7 Buddhas, green in color, in the aspect of Amoghasiddhi. And these are the 35 Buddhas. In the final row are the 7 medicine Buddhas. Think strongly that each of these Buddhas is the embodiment of all the Buddhas, the Dharma, the Sangha, all the statues, stupas, and scriptures of the 3 times and 10 directions, whose essence is the Guru. Have complete faith that each one has the power to purify all your negative karmas and obscurations collected from beginningless rebirths. Now imagine that you emanate, you yourself emanate numberless bodies, and that as you prostrate, all these bodies prostrate along with you in all directions, covering every atom of the earth. Then we'll do the section on the preliminary holy name mantras. To the Bhagawan, Tathagata Arhat, fully complete Buddha, precious victory banner, I prostrate. To Bhagawan, Tathagata Arhat, fully complete Buddha, victory, precious victory banner, I prostrate. To Bhagawan, Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, precious victory banner, I prostrate. Om Namo Manjushriye, Nama Shu Shriye, Nama Utama Shriye Soha. Om Namo Manjushriye, Nama Shu Shriye, Nama Utama Shriye Soha. Om Namo Manjushriye, Nama Su Shriye, Nama Utama Shriye Soha. To Guru, Teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate. All right, now the confession of downfalls. Homage to the confession of a bodhisattva's downfalls. I, and then say your name. I, throughout all times, take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I, throughout all times, take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I, throughout all times, take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. All right, now you stand. If you would like to do full prostrations or whatever you have decided for yourself for prostrations. And I will recite each of these 3 times. But you just begin prostrating and you just continue prostrating and you recite after me each of these names 3 times. To the Guru, Teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate. To Guru, Teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate. To Guru, Teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate. To Tathagata thoroughly destroying with Vajra essence, I prostrate. To Tathagata thoroughly destroying with Vajra essence, I prostrate. To Tathagata thoroughly destroying with Vajra essence, I prostrate. To Tathagata thoroughly destroying with Vajra essence, I prostrate. To Tathagata radiant jewel, I prostrate. To Tathagata radiant jewel, I prostrate. To Tathagata radiant jewel, I prostrate. To Tathagata king, lord of the Nagas, I prostrate. To Tathagata king, lord of the Nagas, I prostrate. To Tathagata king, lord of the Nagas, I prostrate. To Tathagata army of heroes, I prostrate. To Tathagata army of heroes, I prostrate. To Tathagata army of heroes, I prostrate. To Tathagata delighted hero, I prostrate. To Tathagata delighted hero, I prostrate. To Tathagata delighted hero, I prostrate. To Tathagata jewel fire, I prostrate. To Tathagata jewel fire, I prostrate. To Tathagata jewel fire, I prostrate. To Tathagata jewel moonlight, I prostrate. To Tathagata jewel moonlight, I prostrate. To Tathagata jewel moonlight, I prostrate. To Tathagata meaningful to see, I prostrate. To Tathagata meaningful to see, I prostrate. To Tathagata meaningful to see, I prostrate. To Tathagata jewel moon, I prostrate. To Tathagata jewel moon, I prostrate. To Tathagata jewel moon, I prostrate. To Tathagata stainless one, I prostrate. To Tathagata stainless one, I prostrate. To Tathagata stainless one, I prostrate. To Tathagata bestowed with courage, I prostrate. To Tathagata bestowed with courage, I prostrate. To Tathagata bestowed with courage, I prostrate. To Tathagata pure one, I prostrate. To Tathagata pure one, I prostrate. To Tathagata pure one, I prostrate. To Tathagata bestowed with purity, I prostrate. To Tathagata bestowed with purity, I prostrate. To Tathagata bestowed with purity, I prostrate. To Tathagata water god, I prostrate. To Tathagata water god, I prostrate. To Tathagata water god, I prostrate. To Tathagata deity of the water god, I prostrate. To Tathagata deity of the water god, I prostrate. To Tathagata deity of the water god, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious goodness, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious goodness, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious goodness, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious sandalwood, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious sandalwood, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious sandalwood, I prostrate. To Tathagata infinite splendor, I prostrate. To Tathagata infinite splendor, I prostrate. To Tathagata infinite splendor, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious light, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious light, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious light, I prostrate. To Tathagata sorrowless glory, I prostrate. To Tathagata sorrowless glory, I prostrate. To Tathagata sorrowless glory, I prostrate. To Tathagata son of non-craving, I prostrate. To Tathagata son of non-craving, I prostrate. To Tathagata son of non-craving, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious flower, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious flower, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious flower, I prostrate. To Tathagata pure light rays, clearly knowing by play, I prostrate. To Tathagata pure light rays, clearly knowing by play, I prostrate. To Tathagata pure light rays, clearly knowing by play, I prostrate. To Tathagata lotus light rays, clearly knowing by play, I prostrate. To Tathagata lotus light rays, clearly knowing by play, I prostrate. To Tathagata lotus light rays, clearly knowing by play, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious wealth, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious wealth, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious wealth, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious mindfulness, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious mindfulness, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious mindfulness, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious name widely renowned, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious name widely renowned, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious name widely renowned, I prostrate. To Tathagata King holding the victory banner of foremost power, I prostrate. To Tathagata King holding the victory banner of foremost power, I prostrate. To Tathagata King holding the victory banner of foremost power, I prostrate. To Tathagata Glorious One, totally subduing, I prostrate. To Tathagata Glorious One, totally subduing, I prostrate. To Tathagata Glorious One, totally subduing, I prostrate. To Tathagata utterly victorious in battle, I prostrate. To Tathagata utterly victorious in battle, I prostrate. To Tathagata utterly victorious in battle, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious transcendent through subduing, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious transcendence through subduing, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious transcendence through subduing, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious manifestations illuminating all, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious manifestations illuminating all, I prostrate. To Tathagata glorious manifestations illuminating all, I prostrate. To Tathagata all subduing jewel lotus, I prostrate. To Tathagata all subduing jewel lotus, I prostrate. To Tathagata all subduing jewel lotus, I prostrate. To Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, King of the Lord of Mountains, firmly seated on jewel and lotus, I prostrate. To Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, King of the Lord of Mountains, firmly seated on jewel and lotus, I prostrate. To Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, King of the Lord of Mountains, firmly seated on jewel and lotus, I prostrate. To Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, King of the Lord of Mountains, firmly seated on jewel and lotus, I prostrate. And then the seven medicine Buddhas. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, renowned glorious King of excellent signs, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, renowned glorious King of excellent signs, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, renowned glorious King of excellent signs, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, renowned glorious King of excellent signs, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, King of melodious sound, brilliant radiance of skill, adorned with jewels, moon, and lotus, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, King of melodious sound, brilliant radiance of skill, adorned with jewels, moon, and lotus, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, King of melodious sound, brilliant radiance of skill, adorned with jewels, moon, and lotus, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, stainless excellent gold, illuminating jewel, who accomplishes all conduct, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, stainless excellent gold, illuminating jewel, who accomplishes all conduct, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, stainless excellent gold, illuminating jewel, who accomplishes all conduct, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, glorious supreme one, free from sorrow, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, glorious supreme one, free from sorrow, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, glorious supreme one, free from sorrow, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, melodious ocean of proclaimed Dharma, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, melodious ocean of proclaimed Dharma, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, melodious ocean of proclaimed Dharma, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, King, clearly knowing by play of supreme wisdom of an ocean of Dharma, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, King, clearly knowing by the play of supreme wisdom of an ocean of Dharma, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, King, clearly knowing by the play of supreme wisdom of an ocean of Dharma, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, medicine guru, King of Vidura light, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, medicine guru, King of Vidura light, I prostrate. To Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, medicine guru, King of Vajra light, I prostrate. All right, that's the end of the prostration section. And then comes the prayer of confession. So we just take a moment to again try to hold that visualization in our mind as though we are addressing the field of the Buddhas with our confession prayer. All you 35 Buddhas, 7 medicine Buddhas and others, as many Tathagatas, Arhats, perfectly complete Buddhas, Bhagawans as there are abiding and living and residing in all the world systems of the 10 directions. All you Buddha Bhagawans, please pay attention to me. In this life and in all the states of rebirth in which I have circled in samsara from beginningless lives, whatever negative actions I have created, made others create, or in which I have rejoiced, whatever possessions of holy objects, possessions of the Sangha, or possessions of the Sangha of the 10 directions that I have appropriated, made others appropriate, or rejoiced in the appropriation of. Whichever among the 5 heavy actions, heavy negative karmas without break I have done, caused to be done, or rejoiced in the doing of. Whichever of the 10 non-virtuous paths of action I have engaged in, caused others to engage in, or rejoiced in the engaging in. Whatever I have done, being obscured by these karmas, that causes me and sentient beings to be born in the hell realm, in the animal realm, or in the preta realm, in an irreligious country as a barbarian, or as a long-lived god with imperfect faculties, holding wrong views, or not being pleased with the Buddha's descent. In the presence of the Buddha Bhagawans, who are transcendental wisdom, who are eyes, who are witnesses, who are valid, and who see with omniscient consciousness, I am admitting and confessing all these negative actions. I will not conceal them nor hide them, and from now on in the future, I will abstain and refrain from committing them again. All Buddha Bhagawans, please pay attention to me. In this life and in all other states of rebirth, in which I have circled in samsara from beginningless lives, whatever roots of virtue I have created by generosity, even as little as giving just one mouthful of food to a being born in the animal realm, whatever roots of virtue I have created by guarding morality, whatever roots of virtue I have created by following pure conduct, whatever roots of virtue I have created by fully ripening sentient beings, whatever roots of virtue I have created by generating bodhicitta, and whatever roots of virtue I have created by my unsurpassed transcendental wisdom, all these assembled and gathered, combined together, I fully dedicate to the unsurpassed, the unexcelled, that higher than the high, that superior to the superior. Thus, I completely dedicate to the highest, perfectly complete enlightenment. Just as the past Buddha Bhagawans have fully dedicated, just as the future Buddha Bhagawans will fully dedicate, and just as the presently abiding Buddha Bhagawans are fully dedicating like that, I too dedicate fully. I confess all negative actions individually. I rejoice in all the merits. I urge and request all Buddhas, may I achieve the supreme holy and peerless transcendental wisdom. To the conquerors, the best of humans, who are living in the present time, who have lived in the past, and will likewise come. To all those whose qualities are as vast as an infinite ocean, with hands folded, I approach for refuge. And then the general confession. Ula, O great Guru Vajradhara, all other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who abide in the 10 directions, and all the Venerable Sangha, please pay attention to me. I, who am named, circling in cyclic existence from beginningless time until the present, overpowered by delusions such as attachment, hatred, and ignorance by means of my body, speech, and mind, have committed the 10 non-virtuous actions, committed the 5 heavy negative karmas without break, and committed the 5 nearing heavy negative karmas without break. I have transgressed the vows of individual liberation, transgressed the vow of a bodhisattva, and transgressed the samaya of secret mantra. I have been disrespectful to my parents, disrespectful to my Vajra masters and my abbot, and disrespectful to my spiritual friends living in ordination. I have committed actions harmful to the 3 rare sublime ones, abandoned the holy Dharma, criticized the Arya Sangha, harmed sentient beings, and so on. These and many other non-virtuous negative actions I have done, have caused others to do, have rejoiced in others' doing, and so forth. In the presence of the great Guru Vajradhara, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who abide in the 10 directions, and all the Venerable Sangha, I admit this entire collection of faults and transgressions that are obstacles to my own higher rebirth and liberation, and causes of cyclic existence and miserable lower rebirths. I will not conceal them, and I accept them as negative. I promise to refrain from doing these actions again in the future. By confessing and acknowledging them, I will attain and abide in happiness, while by not confessing and acknowledging them, true happiness will not come. And then think strongly that through the force of reciting the names of the 35 Buddhas, the 7 medicine Buddhas, and through the power of their pure prayers and vows, through the power of your regret and the other opponent forces, and through the power of having done these prostrations, nectars, and light rays, descend from the holy bodies of the Buddhas. All the negative karmas, obscurations, and imprints collected on your mental continuum from beginningless rebirths are completely purified. Generate strong faith that your mind has become completely pure. So pause and engage in that visualization. And then we'll recite the prayer to keep pure morality. By abiding in faultless morality of the Dharma rules, completely pure morality, and morality free from conceit, may I complete the perfection of morality. All right. Any questions? Obviously that takes a long time to be able to kind of memorize what you need to memorize with that one. But again, if you have audio playing, then you can just record yourself doing it, and then you just listen to that as you're doing it. That can be a really easy way to memorize it within a few weeks. Any questions? Mhm.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Sorry, guys. Just question. I've never done that one before. I've never seen a mix of physical with meditation and a visual. Oddly, it seems to work very, actually, really kind of cool. I don't have genius words to this, but that was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, generally, the more that we can, because that's why we recite, for example, I mean, just like with the refuge vows or the refuge prayer, rather, we recite that out loud because we're involving our speech. We're not just thinking it, we're involving our speech with the recitation of the. So there is certainly an understanding in Buddhism that the more of our three doors of body, speech, and mind that we can bring together in harmony at the same time, the more powerful, it is. So, you can, if you think something, but if you're also reciting it, and then if at the same time you're also engaging in a physical action, you're joining all of those parts of your body and mind simultaneously, and you're all directing them toward virtue simultaneously. It's a lot more powerful than just if you were to just like think about this or um, so. And like water bowls are another example because they have a meditation. There's different kinds of visualizations that can go along with water bowls. You often there's a text, FPMT has a text called the Preliminary Practice of Altar Setup and Water Bowls. Um, so, that's so you also visualize, when you're doing water bowls, you visualize numberless bodies, also doing water bowls, and you can fill you fill the first water bowl, and then you can fill the second water bowl from that water bowl, and you can kind of use that to think about and then from the second to the third and the third to the fourth and so on down and then you're left with a little bit, and then you go back with the jug and you fill them after that. But that is a way of thinking about like the transmission of the teachings through the centuries, through the millennia, like from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. So Buddhism is really good about these kinds of, and Lama Zopa has a short text called bodhicitta mindfulness, where he talks a lot about different ways of combining thoughts and actions. Like when you turn on a light, you think about, the light dispelling the darkness of ignorance, and when you leave a room, you think about leading all sentient beings out of ignorance into, or when you're showering, you visualize that you're physically, getting rid of negativities, all kinds of physical ways, physical actions that we're doing anyway, cooking and brushing your teeth and, all kinds of things in his book, Bodhicitta, or booklet, Bodhicitta Mindfulness. Um, but it's a very common idea in Buddhism, the importance of combining body, speech, and mind. Anything else from today? Any questions? Nope. So we'll do a final dedication then, thinking about the virtue that we've created during our time together, thinking of our altruistic motivation that we established. We recollect that altruistic motivation, and we think that by having engaged in all of these practices, we have actualized that motivation, which has generated positive energy in our minds. And we think that we freely offer the fruit of our practice, that positive energy, for the benefit of all sentient beings without exception. Thinking strongly, when this positive energy ripens, may it serve as a cause and condition to eliminate war and conflict, poverty, famine, disease, disasters, all painful inner and outer conditions. May it fully ripen the minds of all sentient beings. May they quickly meet perfect teachers and arise in the state of full enlightenment. May I too achieve the state of enlightenment so that I might work for the benefit of all sentient beings perfectly. May any obstacles facing the Guru's long life be completely dispelled. And may I and all sentient beings in this moment come under the joyful care and guidance of enlightened beings. May we be guided and protected until we swiftly achieve that state of enlightenment. All right, so we'll meet again on Monday to address any points of confusion that may still exist from the course. And Venerable Angie starts teaching the module on karma in a couple of weeks on Tuesday the 1st, or Monday the 7th, Monday the 7th. So in in 3 weeks, a little bit of a break this time. All right. Well, have a good rest of your weekend. I hope to see you on Monday.